The search for Hal Jordan's counterpart in the DCU series Lanterns is over, as Aaron Pierre has been cast as John Stewart. Pierre won out against other frontrunner Stephen James after screen tests with Hal Jordan actor Kyle Chandler. The John Stewart character from comics holds a lot of weight, as it was one of DC's first black superheroes and is a fan favorite. You can catch Pierre on Netflix Rebel Ridge and M. Night Shyamalan's movie Old. Who feels like this duo will shine in brightest day and blackest night?
I do. I think this is great casting, considering the two names that were our front runners last time we talked about this, Aaron Pierre and Stephen James. I'm not sure on that, but I was not overly familiar with either of them, but Aaron Pierre was definitely my preferred choice, and he felt like kind of the standout to me. A little bit more of an established name, and I thought he just looked the part with those piercing eyes. But that being said, as far as his body of work goes, the only thing that I've actually seen from him is M. Night Shyamalan's Old, where I'll be honest, like thinking back on that film, I've only seen it the one time, and I could not have told you that he was in the movie until you told me. I know what character he was. I remember him in the movie, but by the nature of that movie, he was not in the movie for very long. Minor spoilers, I guess. But, thinking about his career and the potential there, I can't help but think back. I don't think we talked about it on the show, or if we did, his name was just it didn't register with us the same way. But once upon a time, he was actually attached to that Blade film, the long gestating Blade film. And then circa March 2024, when the script rewrites started happening, he was released from that. So I'm really happy for him. If things did not work out in the Marvel camp to get to be a marquee DC character, and John Stewart is my Green Lantern. Like, I knew the name John Stewart before I knew Hal Jordan or any of the other Green Lanterns, just growing up on that animated Justice League series. So I'm super excited for it. I think it's important representation, and I think this series is going to be awesome. I love the casting of Kyle Chandler, and I think Aaron Pierre is the right age to be able to really have that mentor-mentee relationship that we're talking about. And again, just the talent behind the scenes, Damon Lindelof, people that worked on True Detective, all these other things. Like, this just seems like everything is coming together to make this one of the most exciting DC projects, like the one I'm the most anticipated for. So this is a win in my book for sure.
You talked about the representation, and I feel like one thing I really like about this representation of John Stewart being a black man is it's not Black Lantern. You know what I mean? Like, it's so many black superheroes are superheroes. They're the Black Lightning, Black Panther, sure. And like, as much as I love Black Panther, it is representation, but almost like through the lens of that. And John Stewart to me was just always Green Lantern. You know what I mean? Yes, he's a black man, but like, he's just Green Lantern. I think I kind of like that part of representation. I think they're both important. Both kinds can be important, but I kind of like the idea that we're jumping into a Green Lantern that is black and is that era. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with the casting. I think he is a perfect choice, and I think he was the front runner, particularly among fans, whenever these names started to surface. People that I saw talking about it in public spaces like social media and all that were really saying that Aaron Pierre was their preferred choice of the three that were really being thrown around. And I think fans overall are very happy with it. And as we start to see James Gunn's DCU take shape, we still have a long ways until we'll see these characters come together, I would imagine, in some sort of a Justice League. But it's got to be leading to that point. I mean, we already know, obviously, about Superman, and now we have Green Lantern. We know that there's several characters that need to be brought into the board for that to eventually happen. But if there's one thing we know about James Gunn, well, really there's two things. One is that he decides to put out the news the day after our podcast every single time. So yeah, we saw it, and we saw the disrespect again, James. It's been noted. But two is that James Gunn, he has a nose for casting. Like, he's great at casting. We've talked about that on this podcast before. We've also talked about that DC is not really in the position to be able to nab probably a lot of big names like superhero films were able to do maybe 7-8 years ago, really in the age of the MCU, where these movies were just really cashing billion-dollar checks every time they hit the box office. So if you wanted to bring in a big name for a villain role or something, seemed to be easy to do that. And we've talked about this new age of comic book movies, that we are sort of entering a post-Endgame era in a way for both Marvel and DC, and changes are coming. We're starting to see the tones of these movies shift a little bit. We're starting to see experiments with how much or how little content goes out to the public on streaming services and on film. And so as we're seeing this character get developed on the screen, the small screen, we will eventually see him jump to the big screen. And I think that's the most exciting part of all this to me, is that you've got this very careful growth of this universe. James Gunn this week was asked what projects are in pre-production right now, and he said only at this moment Supergirl and Lanterns, which people were immediately saying, well, what about Batman Brave and the Bold? Like, this is something you announced a long time ago, and he did not have a follow-up to that. But to me, you can look at it and say, okay, well, that's a bad thing because maybe that's been pushed on the back burner. But you can also look at it from the other way and say, if the thing's not coming together, it's not coming together. And maybe it needs to come together later, or with a different vision, or with a different creative team. And so when I see stuff like that, it does give me hope that there is a lot of creative force behind this. Clearly, James Gunn is in the driver's seat, and I think his creative vision, again, we were, I think, rightfully skeptical at the beginning on how he was going to take on this new role. And we still have not even seen a film yet in the DCU. There's still a lot that we have to see, we have to see Superman, we have to see Lanterns first. But at least on this early side of it, on this side of it, it does look interesting from this perspective. And I think as the intrigue continues to grow, and as we start to get the teaser trailer for Superman, Lanterns is still not coming until 2026. We still got a long way. But I think I don't know, I think as a DC fan, you have to be at least a little bit excited by some of this casting, and particularly this one.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, Scotty. I think that this is my most anticipated DCU project they've announced. It just kind of hits all the things that I like, action adventure, kind of this team-up stuff. And I don't know Aaron Pierre, but it sounds like he has kind of a following. Even still, I'd say he's not a household name. I think that's probably fair to say. And that mirrors his character, going with the seasoned Hal Jordan and Kyle Chandler, who, even though I've never seen Friday Night Lights, I know who Kyle Chandler is. Like, that show was so big for so long that it really is speaking to the characters they're supposed to play. So I think it's exciting, and I'm here for these breath of fresh air in terms of actors coming up, because I think we've talked about before, in all of these franchises, we miss that unknown actor coming to some of these roles and really being able to make it their own, and being able to kind of embody the character whole cloth, which when we were doing one-off stuff back in the day, that didn't happen so much. And so this looks like a really strong step towards making something that's Green Lantern focused that's really good.